So the likelihood of these people being guilty is relatively high, but it is estimated that out of those 1,500, 4.1% of them were innocent of their crimes. What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. I have a juicy one today, I guess. I have a morbid one. I don't know. Today's video is probably going to be really intense. I'm going to be sharing my own personal opinion when it comes to capital punishment, or the death penalty. And I asked you guys on my community tab what you all think of the death penalty and should it be enforced, should it not be enforced, and man, did I get a lot of feedback from that. You guys not only voted on that poll, but you sent in so many comments of when you think it should be appropriate to enforce capital punishment. And I really enjoyed reading all of your feedback. A lot of you were very specific about what you think should and should not happen, and I genuinely appreciate that. So thank you all so much for voting on that poll. It helped me understand where you guys are at with that. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my opinion. I'm also going to be sharing 10 facts that you might not know about death row, and we're just gonna have a conversation about it. Please keep in mind that we can have a difference of opinion and still be friends. It's okay. Before we get into it, if you guys are new here, hi, my name is Jess. I'm a person in long-term recovery who has served time in prison, and my entire crazy life story is linked in the description box down below. If you want to follow me on any other social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, that's $2. It's only ever going to be $2. All of that is linked down below, as well as my vlog channel, my podcast, and some other stuff. All right, let's kick this thing off. Did you know that the death penalty is actually as old as written law itself? Which means this dates back to the beginning of time, as far as we know. Side note, that doesn't really matter. I fully believe that I would have been burned at the stake back in the 1800s because, you know, witch vibes. Can I get an amen? So currently there are 25 states that impose the death penalty. Although that number was a little bit weird when I Googled it, because when I Googled it, it said that 38 states allowed the death penalty. So that seems really high. Got conflicting numbers there. Lethal injection is the most widely recognized or most widely used form of the death penalty. The crimes that a person can be sentenced to die for are not just murder, which blew my mind. There are things like treason, espionage, murder, high-level drug trafficking, and murdering a witness or conspiracy to commit murder of a witness, which I thought was like super crazy, because usually when we hear these stories, like true crime stories, we hear that they were sentenced to the death penalty because of like some really vicious, crazy, like awful, violent, gory murder. But in learning that there are multiple different reasons why a person can be sentenced to death, that blew my mind. So a lot of your comments said that it would be easier to put someone to death. It would save us a lot of money instead of them living out their natural life if we just put them to death. That is not true. So it is not cheaper to sentence somebody to die, and here's why. When you have a case that is involving the death penalty or where the death penalty is on the table, that case costs so much money. The trial of it, the lawyers of it, it takes a lot of time. So just the trial alone is so much more expensive than most offenders or criminals when they go to court. So most people end up taking plea agreements. In a plea agreement, you are admitting that you're guilty and you are waiving your right of appeals. This speeds up the process and gets the person put in prison. But if you have the death penalty, chances are you're not going to take a plea agreement because you're going to want to have your appeals. So in that trial, that costs a lot of money. You need more lawyers, you need expert testimony. There's a lot of things that go into a trial involving the death penalty. So that costs a lot of money. Then they're sitting on death row 10, 20, 25 years, exhausting all of their appeals. Now, some of you might say, why the heck do they get all those appeals? That's not right. Why does it take so long to put someone to die? The court system has a very specific way of doing things, and they get 3 appeals or so. There's also all different kinds of things that can happen after a person is sentenced to death. So it takes time, and I don't know if any of you have experienced getting arrested and going to court and all of that. They're slow because this is a very overburdened and backed up system. So it could take a decade to get your first appeal seen. Then the person that was sentenced to death, maybe there was new evidence that they could resubmit, maybe they can get a new trial, that costs a bunch of money. So is it cheaper to put a person to death instead of having them serve life in prison? No. The median or the average cost to put someone to die from start to finish is over $1.2 million for that one person. So it costs a lot more money and a lot of time to sentence someone to die. Death penalty trials cost 48% more than regular trials. That's a substantial amount of money that we're talking about. As of 2018, there were 2,738 inmates on death row. The average wait time on death row is about 15 years. The US has executed over 1,500 inmates since 1976. So the likelihood of these people being guilty is relatively high, but it is estimated that out of those 1,500, 4.1% of them were innocent of their crimes. And while that might not seem like a large number, could you imagine getting arrested, going through all of these trials, which are so heavy and difficult to deal with emotionally, financially? These are really difficult trials, especially for the person that is accused. I have been locked up with people that have life sentences hanging over their head, and that trial is so stressful. I saw one girl's hair fall out. She was so stressed out that she was losing her hair. These are very grueling court proceedings, and it's a really heavy thing to be sentenced to life in prison, as you can imagine. I only met one woman that had the possibility to get the death penalty, and that was Leslie McCool. She was ultimately sentenced to life without parole in prison, but she, when she was going through her trial, had the death penalty on the table. But could you imagine being arrested for a crime that you didn't commit? You go through all of this stuff, you get sentenced to die, and they kill you and you are innocent. Could you imagine that? I can't. I cannot. Obviously, you guys know I was guilty of my crimes. I couldn't imagine doing any time for a crime I didn't commit, let alone being sentenced to die on a specific day. Did you know that China enforces capital punishment, and it is estimated that they have killed about 1,000 people per year, although we don't know for sure how many people they've executed because they keep that on the low down. They keep that information locked up. So what is my opinion of capital punishment? What do I think that we should do as somebody that has a bachelor's degree in correctional program support services, as somebody that has met with COs that have worked on death row, inmates that have worked on death row, as a person that has been to prison myself and has gone through the legal system? What do I personally believe when it comes to the death penalty and capital punishment? It's difficult for me to understand how, as a society, we can say, you're wrong for killing somebody. What we're gonna do, because you killed somebody, is we're gonna kill you. That is just very difficult for me to wrap my head around. Now, I understand that family members want justice. It is only natural when you are hurt to want the person that has hurt you and your family to pay the ultimate price. It's a natural human emotion to want vengeance and justice, and that's normal. The grieving process is very difficult, and I completely understand why some people would want, if their child was hurt, if their family member was hurt, their sister, their cousin, their best friend was hurt, I understand why they would seek the death penalty. As for me personally, I can't stand behind a policy that allows a government to kill its citizens. And with all of the people that I've met in prison, it just doesn't sit right with me to say, because I didn't commit that crime, I can judge you and I can sentence you to die. I don't have that power. And I don't think any human being should have the power to sentence someone else to die. It just does not sit right with me. Now, having said that, I have also heard from people that would rather have gotten the death penalty than spend life in prison. I have watched true crime stories. I have watched court proceedings where the person is asking for that, where the family member is asking for that, and I understand where you are coming from. While I was putting my poll up, I asked you guys, what you thought and everything, and some people told me that because I'm light on crime or because I want prison reform, that I must have not ever had a family member severely beaten and killed or hurt. That's not true. And I've never shared this story before. Maybe we can bring my mom back on the channel and she can tell you what happened to my uncle. But my family has been the victim of a violent crime where someone was beaten to death. My opinion still does not change. I can't wrap my head around capital punishment. I just can't. I've just seen too many errors in the system. I have seen people in prison on the dumbest things, on the pettiest things. And I've met lifers and I've talked to them and I've heard their story. A lot of women are in prison for life without the possibility of parole because their boyfriend or spouse committed a violent crime and they were just there. I think we have too many flaws and too many problems in our judicial system to sentence people to die. I know that capital punishment is always going to be a heated debate, and I completely respect you if you think differently than I do. Fun fact about me that does not pertain to the topic really of this conversation is debating was something that I did in my household growing up. And And my dad told me that I wasn't allowed to debate with him unless I could argue my point from both sides. If you can't argue your point from both sides, then you don't know enough about the topic that you're talking about to have that debate. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I could argue that the death penalty is just and fair, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, what have you. I could also tell you the truth of what I personally believe, and that is that capital punishment is not something that I can stand behind. But I know so much about the death penalty that I genuinely could argue this from both sides, and that is what I would implore you all to do, is to do your research on it. Do your research on other countries and what their policy is. There are still countries where stoning is completely legal. Stoning, like throwing stones until someone is no longer living. There's a lot of really gruesome details about capital punishment in our nation's history in other countries that I think would really surprise you. Something that you might not know about death row is that there is a racial element to people being sentenced to die in this country. Despite white and black murderers being about equal in conviction, 80% of killers sentenced to death are black. 20% of these convicts were actually convicted by an all-white jury. Now again, this is based on a 2003 study by Amnesty International, so definitely do your research on that. And I probably don't say this enough, but our prison system disproportionately affects people of color, and I would implore each and every one of you to do some more research on that. And I know I've said this multiple times on this channel, but please watch 13th on Netflix. This is an incredible documentary. It will show you why it is we started incarcerating so many people. It will show you just everything that you need to know about the prison industrial complex, and I think every single person should watch it. I think they should show it in high schools. I think it's a very important aspect of our society, and I think we would have less of this us versus them mentality, or prisons hold the evil people, or I'm better than you because I've never been to prison. I think we would have less of that if we started to actually learn about what goes on behind those walls, how we got to where we are, and why it is that the United States incarcerates more citizens per capita than any other nation in the world. If we really understood why, I think we would start to fight for prison reform, and I think that we would actually make the necessary changes in this country to make sure that we really are the land of the free. When we incarcerate people because of chemicals they put in their own body, are we really the land of the free? If we house more inmates than any other country in the world, are we really the land of the free? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. This is the last fun fact I'm gonna leave you with. Did you know that executions were public until 1936? Which means like you would have a public execution like in the square or something until 1936. In terms of our nation's history, it's not that long ago. All right, you guys, I'm gonna end today's video here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know this is like a topic of conversation that gets people really heated, so please remember to be kind in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts and what you think, because I really enjoyed reading your comments on the poll that I posted on my community tab. I'm gonna end today's video here. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober, whatever that looks like to you, because there is no wrong way to recover. And I will see you guys in my next one. All right, should I say that? That's so confusing. I don't know how to do this. In my head, it makes sense, but I don't know how to like execute it in the right way.